Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on this fantastic webinar on COVID-safe weddings and best practices for wedding suppliers. I'm super excited. Today, back by popular demand, Mr. John Middleton from Middleton Events in South Australia, and a lady that he spoke very, very highly of in the last webinar on COVID-safe best practices was the lovely Kathryn Hallet. Kathryn is an event lawyer, has a company called Event Law, which I believe is a new passion of yours.
It is. It is. That's right. So I've always been in events to some degree, but I've been able to merge that with my law experience. So it's definitely a passion of mine.
So fantastic. Kathryn's business, Hallett Lawyers, has been offering really, really huge support specifically to wedding suppliers over this year and helping them come up with specific and comprehensive legal documents that have helped reduce a lot of profit loss due to cancellations and postponements. And now Kathryn is doing work with how to future-proof yourself due to changes in restrictions for the wedding industry as a whole, and making sure that you're protecting yourself, of course, from any virus spread. And that's more so what John will help talk to us about on the actual day. And then Kathryn's helping you. We'll discuss a little bit more about how to protect you on the legal side of things. So today's conversation should be fantastic. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat box, and we'll try and get them to them a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Now, John, welcome back.
Thank you. Nice to be back. Thanks for having me.
How is everything going? Are you continuing to ramp up?
Yeah, look, Adelaide is back with a vengeance. We've found that since restrictions have been lifted, we've just had an incredible amount of inquiry. So positive news for other states and other suppliers is hang in there, don't discount your fees, hold your pricing because the avalanche is coming. And what we have found in particular is that our average spend has doubled because people are not going on honeymoons, they're not spending the money elsewhere, so they're looking at the entertainment aspect more of their wedding. So for us, it's been fantastic, really good.
That's so great. And Kathryn, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you've been focusing on, particularly with, I think, with this event law venture that you have, and also some of the things that I spoke about before about kind of future-proofing businesses, wedding suppliers to protect themselves from changes with restrictions.
The work that I'm doing varies with the states or where the clients are in the states. But at the start of COVID, it was very much triaging all of the disputes that were coming about, and that was me being in kind of dispute lawyer mode. And then as it turned out that there was this real need for terms and conditions and this real understanding about contractual relationships. And so I came up with this idea of creating what is an event platform or an event law platform, which gives people the access to the templates that they may need to run their businesses, to have access to educational seminars about how to understand some of the legal aspects a little bit more. So event law is where my focus is going to be over the next coming months to have that really ramp up. I suppose as soon as everybody kind of comes out of that wedding season, has a little bit more time to have a deep breath and think, okay, well, how do I future-proof my business now that we're in this different environment going forward?
And I think one of the things, I think one of the things is that when we engage Kathryn, like my booking and terms of agreement were very solid. We've had them contested in court over the years, but what we found with COVID and the pandemic was that everything had changed, like the whole industry's changed. And it hasn't changed just for COVID, it's changed for the future. Like it's not going to go back to what it was. So when Kathryn looked at my agreement and realised that, yes, it was okay, but there was just so many loopholes in it that really exposed me. And at the end of the day, if we're going to have disputes with our clients, Kathryn's the one that's got to defend us. So we need to make sure that that's future-proofed. And that, you know, to be honest with you, like I thought I would get some feedback from clients regarding the new terms, but it's just been greeted with open arms. And actually, clients love it. They know the fact that we've done our due diligence. We're aware of COVID. We're taking all necessary precautions to provide safety for our guests and our clients. So, getting Kathryn on board was one of the best things we ever did.
think I'll add to that as well. As I had to how I came. Thanks, John. That's really nice things to say. but what put me in the I suppose the front face of really understanding what was going on was I had previously run an events company alongside being a lawyer, amongst the other things I was doing. So I had the background knowledge there, but also because I was almost like from the start line, just dealing with the disputes, over the course of the weeks and the months of early March, April, May, June, I was starting to see the issues that were popping up, and they were the same ones. And so when I was looking at the hundreds of terms that were coming my way, I was able to really work out what had been going on in the industry before COVID. And it wasn't that it was that there was anything totally wrong. It was just that there was a relaxed attitude to the relationships between their brides and grooms, but also just the other suppliers that they were working with. So it's not me coming in and revolutionizing the way that people do business. I think everybody's doing it just completely fine. But it's just adopting a little bit more of a process driven and something a little bit more sophisticated, not to just be throwing and blasting people with these ridiculously technical terms, but just something that just solidifies the relationship a bit more and eradicate some of the vagueness that had existed in the industry beforehand.
And I think, Kathryn, your work is very relative to our industry, and I think suppliers that are tuned in today, I think it's important to understand that there's a difference between a lawyer and an event and wedding lawyer. I didn't want to engage anyone that didn't have any understanding of my business, that I would have to go in and sit down and educate them and teach them about how we work, what we do, deposits, versus the term booking fee. Impossibilities of weddings and postponements of weddings, and they ask questions, how does that work, what does that look like? Whereas with Kathryn, she has a complete knowledge and understanding of that, which made it really simple for us. So
totally not by design either. I mean, if I'd have known the skills that I'd developed over the years running my own business, and if I'd have thought that come March that all of a sudden it'd all make sense to me quite quickly so that I could kick into gear. But that's what I also worked for labour hire companies. I was in-house counsel around the world. And there's a lot to be said about the similarities, because the wedding industry just isn't somebody performing services to a bride and groom. There's so much more to that. It's not just the relationship you have with the bride and groom, like I was saying, it's all of the suppliers around you, the jostling of positions, the sliding in of the contractual relationships all around you, the venue, the photographer, and it really is just it's like an orchestra or a jigsaw puzzle where everyone kind of just slots on in. And so really the more complex side of what I'm doing, John, it's actually not so much the bride and groom stuff is relatively simple, but it's actually the supplier gelling and making sure that we know who's responsible for what, particularly given the new restrictions with COVID, the requirements for COVID plans to be, or the responsibility of venues, who has control over the ceremony, all of these terms that have come up. Because really when it all comes down to it is the contractual relationships between all of the parties, and that's just not just the bride and groom.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So Kathryn, what's the most common thing that you're working on with wedding suppliers at the moment?
Well, look, before wedding season kicked on, there were a lot of proactive people going, okay, I have a ton of people coming at me for postponements. I am not wanting to sign anybody up until I know that when I do sign people up to terms, they're going to be good ones. So June, July, August, well, firstly, I have still those disputes that are kicking on. And for the most part, I've been able to resolve them quite easily through some common sense, good customer service, and just some nudging legally. It's got a little bit quiet because everybody's just so focused on just doing the weddings right now. But that's given me a ton of breathing room to be able to set up this event law platform where when people come out of that wedding season and take a deep breath, that's when the overlooking of their business going, right, I'm going to make sure that I never have this kind of hell ever again. Because 2020, 2021, I can say for absolute sure is going to be madness. The racing of events, the trying to jostle a bride and groom having to postpone something and then trying to coordinate 15 suppliers to have one date. I'm already seeing it happen. So actually I am gearing up for some potential issues about in that kind of area. But my main focus right now is to get Event Law platform ready to go, so that when people do come out of that season and they can turn their minds to the admin of their business, they can come on and go, all right, florist terms, bang, Kathryn, what have you got for me? And so that's my focus right now.
Awesome. Have you done any work with waivers? Getting couples to sign them, and maybe guests as well? And I think, John, this was probably something you can speak to as well.
I'm just gonna, so this is where I've got to think if I don't bore people to tears here, but there's we talk about waivers, and then we talk about indemnities. I know, I'm like, oh, that's a wine glass. Awkward. And this is where I want to do a lot more work in the legal education sphere for the industry, because we use the word waivers, all right? So bride and groom, you sign this waiver, so I'm not responsible. You've got to be a bit careful, because the legislation actually forces obligations onto wedding suppliers, like COVID safe plans, or if you're a celebrant, are you, or venue, if you're in the conduct and control of ceremonies and all of that. And so waivers, I've got to say, I'm not promoting them. If anything, I'm going to go use a little bit more of a complex term and say indemnities. So law is requiring me to do this. If you play a role into me not being able to follow these laws, then you're going to indemnify me for the loss. So it gets a bit technical, me explaining the difference between a waiver and an indemnity. I'm not encouraging waivers. I'm encouraging terms and conditions that indemnify a supplier for loss suffered as a result of somebody not doing things right. But that said, there are pieces of legislation where you can't, what we call, contract out, and a lot of that is the health, the safety laws, where the regulatory bodies don't give two tosses whether you've got you're trying to pass on that liability. It's yours, and it's yours to stay. So so waivers, not a big fan. Indemnities in your terms, big fan, but I wouldn't be going alone drafting them at all. I think that you should be getting somebody like myself or some other lawyers out there that are doing good work to do that for you.
And look, I know there's probably some suppliers watching saying, well, I don't need all that legal coverage, but the reality is, if you're a serious supplier in the wedding industry, you've got to have these processes in place, because there is going to come a time where you're going to be challenged, and you want to make sure that everything is in place, from your website terms and conditions, your privacy policies, right through to your terms and conditions of booking. So it's really, really important to pay attention and take the time to work through it, because it doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's a great investment in your business to make sure that if anything does happen and everything turns south, you've got someone like Kathryn that's written a fantastic agreement that you can pull out and go, well, there it is.
So what I'm currently doing is working through the suppliers at the moment, because again, this has been one of the things that I noticed when I started really taking a real good look at what was going on in the industry, is that a lot of people were pulling their terms and conditions off American sites, or they were ripping them off from Joe Blow that was also doing weddings from the UK, or they were being sold those basic. Now I've just got to be careful there. I'm not saying that the terms and conditions that people have are rubbish. A lot of the photography subscription, Celebrant Institute subscriptions, they all have terms and conditions which are completely fine. However, what I am going to be offering is actual supplier specific. But can I just say though, I'm actually going to jump into your role, John, because you're doing a good job at selling my services, but also the responsibility has to be on the supplier to be doing the right thing on the day. So I can draft all of the contractual terms till the cows come home. But Correct. If you don't have a COVID safe plan that the legislation requires you to, or if you are allowing people to be there and not, 100 people, but no, 100 people in, as long as there's 4 square density, I can't solve that for people. So you've got to do 2 things. You've got to have terms and conditions, but you've also got to be on the day doing the right thing. So you can't just go, oh, well, I've got Kathryn's terms and conditions, I'm saved. I would love, and I'd probably be really rich if I could say that I can develop most bulletproof terms that will save you forever and ever more. So I certainly wouldn't be complacent if you've got good terms, but I could certainly say you can be a little bit more relaxed knowing that they've been drafted by somebody that's been through the hell that's COVID, but also has that background in events. But I think the work needs to be on the ground where John is, and that's just good business practice.
Yeah, and exactly right. Having your COVID safe plans, doing all your due diligence, and have it online. So in a PDF document on your website that venues and clients can download, they can have a look at along with your public liability insurance. A couple of things that Kathryn really spiked my awareness about was the cooperation and house rules within our agreement. And making sure that we're cooperating, and the client's cooperating with us in terms of house rules. You might be able to explain more about that. And also safety for our staff on site, making sure that the client's providing all the appropriate protocols around COVID. And no doubt Kathryn's going to talk about the difference between the client and venue contract and bride and groom or couples contract with supplier, because very, very different. So
it's interesting. What I've noticed is actually suppliers are not entering into terms with venues. It's almost like, well, you've got the contract with the bride and groom to be here, so I'm guessing that everything's just going to be okay. I'm starting to see the emergence of venues because, and if I'm honest, if I look at all of the legislation around Australia, the obligations to make sure that everything is COVID safe is seeming to fall on those that have the control of the premises itself, and that is the venue. And so I am seeing a real emergence of the venues starting to put their foots down with anybody that steps through the door. And so you're right, John. There is going to be that shift to, if you're a general supplier, to be listening to two controlling parties, and that is your bride and groom, but also the venue. So one of the questions that I had from people were, what happens if I'm at a wedding and people are just not adhering to COVID? My response is that you have an overriding duty to your employees, your contractors, and this is in workplace health and safety legislation, and there's no compromising. If you're putting your employees in a situation where they are at risk from a health and safety perspective, you have to do everything in your power to remove them from that premises. And so in your terms, for example, you have to say to a bride and groom, you should be aware that if we feel that we're at risk here, we're out. I literally wave at you and we're out the door. Whether, it's not for me to say to suppliers that they have to abide by that, but I think it's something that you really need to think of, because the liability of you having an employee stay at a ceremony and then get COVID, you're responsible as an employee.
And one of the things that I've noticed one of the things I've noticed in particular with the venues is what Kathryn said, is the liability is coming back to the venue because they're the licensed premise. So it's more and more important now for suppliers. It doesn't matter whether you're a florist, you're decor, or you're a celebrant, or you're a DJ, MC, you're running a photo booth company. It doesn't matter who you are. It's really, really important to have open communication, discussion with the venue, have a briefing session, make sure you're all compliant, you're on the same page. One of their biggest concerns at the moment with venues is the behaviour of guests, right? Because what we're noticing in Adelaide, 150 people maximum over here, open dance floors, you can drink vertically. They call it drinking vertically, not till you get horizontal.
Consumption.
Drinking vertically.
That's how it starts, right?
Vertical consumption as opposed to horizontal consumption. I don't know. We've seen some really weird lingo going on in this space.
But most importantly, what we're doing, particularly as MCs, is we're educating the crowd and the audience, and we're actually, on behalf of the venue, saying in a very nice and friendly manner, please drink responsibly, have fun, celebrate, make sure you enjoy the night. But if you are consuming excessively, it will be cut off, and the venues are really hot on that at the moment, making sure that they're not.
That's it though. If you're a venue, if the venue is actually not paying attention to their responsibilities, you can't save people from themselves. If you've got a venue that's not giving a toss, it's their liquor license to lose.
Correct.
So,
all I'm saying is, as an external supplier coming in as an MC, they're saying, here's your housekeeping rules, John. Smoking, toilets, bathrooms, COVID policies, COVID plans. Ensure social distancing, and by the way, excessive drinking So we're finding at venues in Adelaide, they're wanting us to talk about that now, which they've never had in the past.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. It's your job to be reminding people, hey, by the way, I was at a
not to police it.
I was at a ceremony the other day, and it was the celebrant's job to outline the restrictions and COVID before the ceremony. So yeah, you're right. Sorry, you are the vocal. But that said, I had an interesting discussion with a DJ, and he's like, look, if I'm seeing some behaviour on the dance floor and I'm the DJ, what is my responsibility? If the law says that it's the venue and the venue are not paying attention, it's not that you endorse it, you have to raise it with the venue. But at the end of the day, don't take on liability and responsibility for which you are not legislatively required to. Because if you take on that responsibility, whether it's contractually or verbally, you're exposing yourself to something that A, you're not required to, but B, you probably haven't factored into your cost. So yeah, by all means, if you want, say for example, you are a photographer and they're like, hey, we need a COVID marshal. You don't just go, oh sorry, COVID marshal's a South Australian thing. You don't just go, oh, okay, I'll be the COVID marshal. It's like, hang on a minute, is the price that I'm offering comparable to the risk that I'm taking on this? If the answer is no, you go up my price and I'll do it, or no, the legislation says venue that it's your job. And there's going to need to be a little bit of pushback on suppliers. And suppliers should be aware of who's responsible for what. So if you're pushed to do it, they can be like,
Kathryn, I think we're having that crackling audio issue again.
So if you are being pushed to have a responsibility that's really not yours legislatively, you push back or you increase your prices to factor in the risk.
100%.
So I have an interesting question. What are your thoughts on instigating a bond or penalty should guests break COVID rules? I would assume this is a heavy breach of rules.
I have a the legal straight answer is that the law does not allow you to have penalty clauses in contracts. Straight up, they're not binding. The only people that have the ability to penalise is an authority or a body or police or whoever has the power to do that. So if you have in your clause, if you do X, Y, Z, you're going to be penalised, you risk that being challenged by the other contracting party as being that. However, if there is a bond, and the bond is set as what we would call liquidated damages, or an amount which is reasonable to the loss that you could potentially suffer, that's a different story and that might stack up. But it has to be in reverse. So bonds have always been a legitimate way, but you have to make sure that you have that what you set as that bond is commensurate to what your potential loss can be. And that clause be written very, very carefully to say that. But I would absolutely say do not put the word penalty or a high amount that's not realistic to the loss of it.
Yeah, right. I'm going to flip this around a little bit, and we can have touched on it very, very lightly before. What should couples do if they think their suppliers aren't taking the COVID safety seriously? We're talking all about, suppliers doing the right thing and guests abiding. What if it's going to be the other way around?
I think the potential here is that a lot of the clients now are quite diligent, like they're doing their research, they're doing their homework, and they're now more than ever looking for the COVID issues, not only on your website with your COVID plan, but also in your agreement. Like they're becoming a little bit more smarter than they ever have been. But I also think that the suppliers are going to be very, very careful if they're not compliant, because it falls back to the venue, and the venue, you don't want your venue to blacklist you. You don't want them also to not encourage clients to use your services. So it's more important now for suppliers to be cooperative with venues to make sure that they are compliant, and just go and have a cup of coffee with them, sit down, and even before you're bumping in on the Saturday or the Friday or the Sunday, just give them a phone call, shoot them an email and say, hey, look, I'd love to have a chat with the wedding coordinator, the banquets manager, whoever, and have a discussion and just have a chat and say, look, we're fully compliant, we respect the venues. If you've got your housekeeping rules that you'd like us to go through on the day or on the night, send them through. But yeah, communication, I think, is the key thing to make sure that you are compliant. And if couples don't see that, I would bail, to be honest.
Spot on, John. So the question that I heard you say, Amy, is what happens if couples see suppliers not doing the right thing? I'm hoping that we're going to see a levelling up of suppliers to take COVID. You know, there's going to be some commonality of what suppliers are going to need to do. Now, there's going to be obviously the legislative, or sorry, the contractual ramifications of not falling, but it's going to come down to straight out customer service. So hang on a minute, I've got this supplier that when I asked, do they have a COVID plan, they're like, nah. We are going to see some, well, hopefully some hyper-vigilant brides and grooms going, don't know if that's a supplier I want to work with. But, you know, pay peanuts, get monkeys. So brides and grooms are going to be paying for what they get. And so if they go in eyes wide open and then they don't have a supplier that has what those things in place, then buyer beware. And I hope that buyers as brides and grooms are going to be more aware. Yeah, and it should ring alarm bells. Do I want to work with this person now if they don't? And if their answer is yes, I do, then that's a reflection on the bride and groom.
I mean, we talk to all of our clients in respect of agreements. You know, do you have an agreement with your supplier? And they say no. And I say, well, are you booking them? And they go yes. And I'll go, well, on what basis? You know, are they going to be there on the day? Do they have contingency plans? So really, really important that the suppliers stack up. And as Kathryn said, there is going to be a weeding out of low-end suppliers, the hobbyists, the part-timers. So all of this stuff now is becoming more and more crucial as we go through.
Can I be honest though, if you're a supplier and you're umming and ahhing over whether you should have a COVID safe plan, it's 15 to 20 minutes of your life. Like it's, you know, you get your template, you amend it for every event you go to. It's literally whacking in a bit of detail. But you know, you're not going to be required to give a War and Peace Tolstoy literature that is a COVID safe plan. It's not a complex document, and a lot of it's just it's just common sense. So if you don't have a wedding supplier that's prepared to go and do their COVID safe plan, my question is how much effort are they going to be putting on the day just to do actually what they're paid to do? It is, yeah.
So interesting. I've got a question that's come through from a celebrant in Victoria. I don't know how up to speed you both are with the restrictions in Victoria, because we've created a fairly comprehensive tracker at Easy Weddings, which I'm updating, and my head explodes several times a day trying to kind of feed through the small amounts of information about who does what, and it's still largely unknown. So Tasman has asked, I'm a marriage celebrant. I'm wondering who is the designated COVID marshal in a public gardens or private home. I have it in my T's and C's that the couple is responsible for the COVID regulation compliance when it's not a paid venue. Is this the case?
This is going to be interesting. So, sorry, John, did I dive in there?
No, you go. You go first.
Amy, I feel your pain. I actually was using a whiteboard because I have clients all around Australia. In fact, I have some in New Zealand, but I literally was almost like doing a tally, and the way in which the governments were drafting, and they were drafting on the hop, had no idea how they were going to be, and it was making it very, very difficult for lawyers to understand. Now, if the lawyers are confused, we've got a problem. And so, firstly, congratulations on trying to even dive into that. If what you've created there is very, very helpful. So I'm sure a lot of people are very grateful for that. What it all comes down to about who is responsible for what, I would not be relying on fun little infographics provided by your government. It all has to go right back to the legislation itself, into that section where it says COVID marshal. And I've made a pretty large assessment that Victoria is going to use the same way in which South Australia did it, but thankfully going to learn some of the horrible lessons that we learned by South Australia just doing terribly. But my answer to that question is we need to go back to the Victorian legislation, and it will say very clearly someone, something must have a COVID marshal. go back to what I was saying before about only taking on responsibility for which you are legislatively required to do. In the event that you go above and beyond to do that, up your prices to factor in the risk that if you get it wrong, the liability is yours. And then you've got to be like, oh, I've got to charge more. No, push back and go, no, the person, and it usually is the person that's in the care and control of the premises. We saw in South Australia at the very, very start that it was the care and control of the ceremony. And I'm like dialing up the government going, no, because all the celebrants were just like, oh, I don't want to, what? So just go back to the legislation. I would be highly surprised that it's the person that's in the care and control of the ceremony, given the kick up that happened in South Australia when they attempted to do that. But be careful. COVID marshal, COVID contact tracing, check COVID tracing might be somebody that's in the care and control of the ceremony. So well, I'm not expecting people to look in the legislation themselves, but that would be where I look as Victoria's coming out of this to say who is going to be responsible for what. But again, if it's a theme through all of this is to do not take responsibility on in your terms and conditions that you're not required to legislatively.
I mean, I'm a celebrant as well, and the risk-weight ratio, for me is like, I'm not getting involved. I'm there as a contractor to the client and to do my job.
Yeah. So we need to be like, hey, venues, so if I think about all the suppliers that are making the most money out of this, I'm saying it's the venues. So you need to be like, venues, you're the one that is getting the benefit of this event actually happening on your premises. So while I appreciate this might seem a little bit too hard, you're the one that ends up with $16,000 in your bank account for this. So I'm sure
they're charging room and ceremony hire costs as well. So
it's so care and control of the premises. So if it's anybody, but also as a venue, you should be. If this goes wrong, it's your liquor license at stake. So some of the liquor license or the licensed venues, I wouldn't be wanting to hand over it to anybody. That's your lifeblood. Like that's your bread and butter, your liquor license. And it's been interesting is that they've a lot of the your liquor license is going to be impacted if you're done for this. Now, venues can't operate without the liquor licenses. Simple as that.
It's interesting, and certainly as more information becomes available about who's in charge and what we need to do for each specific wedding supplier category, we'll make that available. Unfortunately, it's just not something that's been addressed yet, but we will endeavour to get more details.
Amy, I think that with a fair degree of comfort that they're going to go along the road of South Australia with
makes a lot
those
of sense.
COVID marshals and that. Well, it does. It's like this. We're in this crazy labyrinth where there was just some weird stuff going on and COVID marshals, and it was a very bizarre time. But it does work. So please resist that temptation of having somebody say, oh, that's a little bit too hard basket, because I think it actually enabled the South Australian industry to kick into gear quite quickly and quite positively.
And having said that too, I think it's really important to check your local legislation regularly, because here in South Australia it was changing every hour, wasn't it, Kathryn? It was ridiculous. I mean, every hour it was changing, and it was this and it was off.
It was an exhausting. It's been an exhausting 6 months, and I was losing faith in the government to even be drafting decent legislation. So, we had to do what we were doing with the best and the skills that we had at the time. But it was a very intense. It's been a very intense 6 months to understand what was going on.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that things are starting to ramp up again.
Oh, very, very much so. It's such amount. John, I'm sure you agree. The level of optimism has just skyrocketed. I was saying to John before this is that there's been some announcements that we are actually won't be in a recession come next quarter. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it certainly shows that there's a level of optimism to actually be saying that. And what that then means is that brides and grooms feel a little more relaxed to be throwing that extra bit of money, because if they're being told we're coming out of the recession, all of a sudden their jobs are safe, and they can begin to plan those bigger weddings that they probably thought they weren't going to be able to have some 3-4 months ago.
And I think for suppliers, it's really important, don't get caught in the trap of offering discounts for next year, because next year is going to be phenomenal. You're going to sell yourselves way short. You're going to book out early, but you're going to drop, lots and lots of dollars on the table. So just be mindful that keep your books open, hold your price, stand your ground, provide added value for sure, but certainly don't discount. We're seeing lots of discounts being offered in Adelaide. Why? I just don't understand. People are booking out, and we're seeing tremendous growth and double the spend because people have got more money. They want more value. They want more oomph in their wedding. They want more of the wow factor. So there's lots of opportunities for suppliers, and we're seeing that growth in Adelaide just boom now that we've lifted restrictions.
But also, the thing that I'm confused about is that if you were coming into 2020 and you're a wedding supplier that's usually booked out anyway, why would you be discounting? You're already on the back foot. You're going to have the same level of business because there's only so many days, or there's only so many Saturdays in the week. You've actually got a greater chance of making more money by reinventing your services to be like, hey, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, great days. So don't discount, actually keep your prices the same and actually level up on your days that you don't usually have weddings and start selling that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday package, because the issue is not going to be money 2021, 22, it's going to be space. So
Correct.
why discount space that's not there?
Yeah.
It mind boggles, John, that's what you're hearing. And I believe it, totally believe it. Because everyone's trying to make up for the money that's lost. By discounting. It's a false economy. So I 100% concur, John.
There's peak and there's off peak. We're seeing some celebrants work for $250, $300, and I'm looking, saying why? Why would you? However, that's their choice. However, peak and off peak, you might want to have a look at a bit of variance between your rates around those Monday to Friday gigs, and then your weekends where your peak times are. Just hold your price, because you're going to get inundated once restrictions lift. Guaranteed. We're seeing it already in Adelaide.
I'm always just so very, also as a lawyer, I tend to stay in my lane. As a business owner, I kind of don't need to, but I think if you're a wedding supplier that has a ton of work, then that's an immense amount of privilege. That doesn't mean to say that I disregard or disrespect those that are really worried about putting money on or food on their table. It's been a frightening 2020, and a lot of people are hurting right now. So, by all means, if people think that discounting is going to get that money in, then certainly not for me to judge. I think, it comes. I suppose it's a privileged position to be like, hold your line. But a lot of people are worried where their money's going to come from, and so I don't judge.
Yeah, it's absolutely a difficult mindset to navigate. If you've been without income for such a long time, then you will make different business choices to try and get some money in your pocket now, instead of kind of holding on with uncertainty for longer and longer. But the great thing is that we're seeing so many suppliers that are at 80% capacity for next year, which is just crazy, and the industry is expected to jump up to 145,000 weddings and 150,000 weddings in the next couple of years, which is just huge. So the opportunity for businesses that can really put their feet in and hold ground to expand and be far bigger and more successful than before it's really, really exciting to see the opportunity there.
Can I just hustle my services? Sorry, John. I just want to say, if you are going to be carrying that kind of capacity for weddings, make sure your terms and conditions are up to scratch, because you are going to be working harder and faster, and to work that kind of volume and keep your eye on things. No, you're going to want to have your terms and conditions absolutely up to scratch coming into next wedding season or the next booking blast. And I am selling my services there, but it makes sense that you do not want to be carrying 140 weddings on your books, not knowing what the terms and conditions are, and just hoping for the best. I think that's even scarier. That's a scary proposition. Sorry, John, I interrupted there.
No, I was just going to say before, please don't misunderstand what I said. I was talking about discounting for 2021. short term.
No, I didn't.
People need to eat, people need to survive, and I understand, you know, that the opportunities there for, you know, a wedding or a function that's coming up short term. You might want to grab that because you do need to survive. But certainly, 2021 is going to be a phenomenal year for the whole industry, and we just need to be ready. You know, we need to make sure we've dotted the i's.
John, I don't think you were saying anything inappropriate there, because it's a business psyche, isn't it? Of I don't have any work, but okay, discount. I mean, I'd be having that discussion. Even lawyers, like, oh my God, you know, my family law practice is slowing down, so why don't I offer? No, it's a false economy. If you're going to be doing the same thing, why discount? Like, it's no, I don't think you were saying anything inappropriate there, John, at all. But I suppose, yeah, everybody's just got to do what they've got to do to survive. But the business psyche is to endorse that. It's not a healthy one.
Yeah, 100%.
So let's go back to having a chat about some having weddings on a private property, so in someone's backyard. And of course, there's a few vendors that are going to be involved. It's not going to be huge catering and probably not a lot of table service and bar service and that. Who is in charge of those suppliers in that private area? Is it the couple? I know in some states a wedding planner has to be in charge and plan a wedding privately in someone's backyard, but that's not the case for all states. And also, is there any kind of T's and C's to be on the lookout for this kind of scenario?
That's interesting question, and a little bit of a loaded one, because as you've identified, the regulation of weddings on private premises vary state by state. I have to say I have not seen any legislative term there, correct me if I'm wrong, that puts the onus on the wedding planner. I think I worry about it being the wedding planner, because it seems to make sense, because the person that's kind of organising it all seems responsible. Be on the lookout. There's consistency state by state wide of just that common language of somebody who's in the care and control of the premises. And so if you are going to, if you're gonna have people come onto your property, then you are responsible for the well-being of those people on the property. So again, so just keep an eye out. Care and control of the premises versus care and control of the person of the ceremony. Care and control of the person of event. Look for those three things. I could do a whole lecture on the haphazardness of wedding planners taking on responsibility. I'm actually looking at doing a little bit of an education on that one, because wedding planners are taking on the care and management of suppliers and not having contracts with each of those suppliers. So that's a new killer fish. So private premises, look to your legislation, look to see who has the care and control and responsibility for each of those tasks. And again, just repeating myself, don't take on responsibility for which you are not legislatively required, or in the alternative, being paid to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
That answers your question, because there's all kinds of things that you've got to take into account. Grazing plates. Can you use grazing plates? Shared utensils. Are you going to be able to drink and stand? Drink, eat, stand. Like, it's extraordinary. But this is the area where people such as myself and other lawyers that specialise in this stuff, that's where we're going to come in handy.
And in South Australia, we had the difference between a licensed property and a private property was entirely different. Like, you could drink and you could dance, providing you didn't exceed the maximum numbers. So yeah, if you are on an unlicensed property, you could do all of that. Licensed property, you couldn't do that. So
I had one of the things that we saw in South Australia, which was just extraordinary, and this was just because of really crappy legislation, is we had brides and grooms shifting their events to Airbnbs and calling them private functions to then escape the laws that were going on. And thankfully, the government clued onto this quite early, and that next issuing of the direction came out and said, for the purposes of weddings, Airbnbs, or they use wording, is considered to be a commercial premises, not residential. So they were onto that one very, very quickly. I've heard even that brides and grooms are pretending things are birthday parties and you know, describing their weddings as birthday parties. The law's going to catch up with them.
It is.
But it's just, it's because also that one of the things that I've been saying in a lot of my webinars is I can preach to you what the law is, but there's going to be one thing that hurts you the most, and that is you're going to be on the front page as a venue as being the one that held the wedding that was a super spreader. And to be honest, I think that would be far worse for business than a penalty.
Yeah.
That'd be the worst PR you get.
Well, that's right. And we saw the emergence of some pretty bad press from some venues in New South Wales, and rightly or wrongly, I'm not going to dive into that. It's not for me to comment, but that was a combination of media getting fired up, the emotion, the misunderstanding of contractual relationships, and it was just, I have this saying is that always what you do, use what we call the Sydney Morning Herald test. In other words, if something goes wrong, are you prepared for this to be on the front page of a newspaper? If your answer is no, don't do it. You don't need to be a lawyer to teach that lesson.
No, it's definitely a good one to think about though. There's always, I know people are trying to push rules and boundaries as far as possible and be innovative with workarounds, which are sometimes not quite fluid enough to be within a restriction, but that's a really good test to think about.
I've even had brides and grooms go, oh, but how about, like, I know that there's a potential $5,000 fine, so how about like we pay that for you if you get done? And it's like, I don't work like that. Fine, loss of liquor license, consequential loss of never being able to trade again. By all means, if you want to take on that responsibility, go for it. But it's probably got a few more zeros after that 5,000, and all of a sudden the brides and grooms don't think that's a very good idea.
That's actually a really good segue to the next question that I have for you. We have an exceptionally demanding client who won't chat to us in any way other than very aggressively in emails. She's expecting us to hire more staff at our own cost. Is that reasonable?
No.
Absolutely no.
Seems like a no-brainer.
I would almost be like, so what you do is ring up your local gardener and you need your lawns mowed, and you say, can you just make sure that you have 5 other people to do the gardens, the flowers, the watering for free? And then they're like, you know what I mean? Like, so I have been almost, I've been, or even just discounting, like, you know, when you go and pick up that jar of Vegemite and go to the front counter of Woolworths, do you go, could you do that for a little less? Do you mind if it's, you know, nah. But this is the problem with service industries, right? Because they don't actually understand that there's value in what you do, and that's the problem. Is that when people have been holding on to booking fees, there's just been this complete misunderstanding of brides and grooms that actually work has been performed. That what is being done on the day is just a portion of how the industry works. A wedding planner can begin and do majority of the work from the minute that person walks through the door. But going back to that one though, is I've been spending a lot of time working with people to address really difficult, unreasonable people, and I did a little booklet about how to address really, really unreasonable people. Because at the end of the day, if somebody's being really, really unreasonable, they're not going to stop being unreasonable. You're not going to actually just tell them what your contract says, and all of a sudden they're going to be like, oh, well, that's a good point. I'm sorry, I've been really rude to you. Your conflict style is what comes in handy and not the law. And I outlined, 5 ways. And most of that firstly starts with just listen. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Okay, I acknowledge it. All right, empathy. What do you want from me? Okay, well, here is why what you're wanting from me is not reasonable. For me to do what you need to do, here is my labour cost. But that said, though, don't let these people drag you, because if they're a nightmare in the correspondence before the wedding, the day itself is going to be an absolute dumpster fire. You're just like, I don't actually want you as a client. I know I'm hard up for money at the moment, but that you're actually, if these are the issues going on now, I don't even want to be there on the day for when your napkin's not folded correctly. So signs early on that if there's people that you don't want to work with, then you find a great way to say that you're not available.
Yeah, and I, for one, if I was the venue, I'd be calling an immediate meeting and sitting down with a client and calling them in and getting face-to-face and going through that mediation in terms of, identifying the problems, showing empathy, understanding, and then, writing the right act with the client, making sure that they're compliant. But definitely no, it's not the venue's responsibility. No.
I like that. So you can see why John's in his job and I'm in mine, because I'm just like, sack them off and just get rid of them. Like, find a reason. See you in court. Whereas John's like, well, we're just going to sit down and we're just going to,
let's talk about it. We can talk through this. We can work this out, right?
Well,
it's great.
I think, to be honest, sorry?
It's great reading, Kathryn. She says, John, have you told him to get stuffed? I go, no.
Can I say though is that for the majority of all of the clients that I've worked with, it's not been my legal genius that's really crossed the issue over the line to resolve. It's been the behaviour of the suppliers to just get suppliers to de-escalate and go, okay, well, what is it that you want from me? Can it happen? What does the contract say that can happen? But that said, though, if you've got someone so completely irrational, I've had to say to clients after about the 5th response back to them to say no, I've actually said, you know what, go to the Ombudsman, go to Consumer Affairs, because just do what you've got to do, because if we are this polar apart in expectations and understanding of the situation, then 5 more, 10 more emails back and forwards is certainly not going to clear this up. So put your money where your mouth is, file in court. But again, that's the reason why I'm in my job and John's in his.
Yeah, and I think from a supplier's perspective, really important to get it in writing. Like, great to talk to the client, but if there is a dispute, just tell them to detail all their concerns in writing. Once you've got that report, obviously view it, look at it, and form your case first before you ring the client, so you're prepared and you've got all your facts and your figures. I mean, I had a client that complained about one of my shows, and she didn't like my service because she wanted her money back. She did it with every single supplier. She wanted a refund from every supplier because she spent too much money. But what I did, I went to my videographer and I said, can I have a grab of the speeches? And he said, why? And I said, because she was thanking me and getting the crowd to applaud my services and said how fantastic I was throughout the whole day, because I married them, did the emceeing. So I just
sort of like John doing an amazing job, and then 5 weeks later did a terrible job.
Yeah,
no, that's
exactly.
interesting.
So she posted that on social media, so I just posted the video directly under her comment where she was thanking me, saying what a great job I did. And with that, she tore down the comments and tore down the post. So really
an excellent clapback.
yeah. And I didn't give her any.
That's actually a segue here as well, is the threat or the blackmail of a review.
Yeah.
So over the course of COVID, I had a lot of my clients come to me and say they're threatening me with a bad review. Now, my nose gets out of joint, this review culture of, if you do not give me what you want, I will bad review you.
Yeah.
My response should be, bad review me. Like, there's nothing much I can do about that. Because if you are a supplier that has 82 5-star reviews and 1 bad one, that's going to stand out like dog's bollocks. And sorry about the term, but people are more likely to take that, go, all right, something's a bit wrong there. When you get a bad review, do not go and defend your case on that review in response.
No.
Resist the temptation. Clients are more likely to read your response to the bad review than the review itself. So
Correct.
I'm really sorry that this is the way. I open up the lines of communication. I'm more than happy to speak more about your experience here. Please do not hesitate to contact me on such and such. Because
get it off
your
social
business,
media.
Just take it off. Don't the response to the view is not your job to put your case forward
No.
It actually reinforces the bad review. You just go, I'm sorry you feel this way. I'm more than happy to discuss this. Please contact me. And then get like all your friends to whack another 60 reviews on how amazing you are, and that bad review will just drop into the history of reviews. But I've seen that a lot. If you don't give me my refund back, I'm going to bad review you. Okay.
That's so awful. I mean, I think the exception to the rule is in John's case when he has some actual content to share without words that kind of prove otherwise. I think that is the exception to the rule. But yeah, generally, like
the people that are actually already coming to you because of your good reputation, going to roll on through your reviews and go, well. So I look. There's dignity in silence. John. That, I mean, I think, yeah, if you've got that video, go for it. For me, there is dignity in silence, and that is, sorry you feel this way, please by all means contact us, and we can see. Half the time they're not going to contact you because I've been contacting you 8 times before and gotten a no. So, but I've seen some pretty atrocious things, like people creating fake accounts, bombarding, that kind of behaviour. It's so hard, but don't ever be blackmailed or held to ransom by a bad review. No. And it's easy to have that happen.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, on that very somber note, I'm going to wrap it up for today. But before we leave, I would love for you to both share with me your 5 top tips for ensuring that suppliers are COVID compliant from the dance floor to their T's and C's.
Let's go John first, because mine are more T's and C's than dance floor. I've been dance floor for quite some time.
I think we've covered a lot of the stuff in the webinar in terms of making sure you've got a COVID plan, making sure that you're briefing your staff. You have your little sanity kits, which you've got here, which you've got like mic filters and little face masks, tissues, wipes, hand sanitizer.
Wow.
So
you're going camping with me, John, next time. Look at this.
Yeah. So we provide those. So I mean, just if I can give you any advice, just make sure that you prove to your clients and you prove to the venues that you are compliant, you've done your due diligence, you're following protocols, and you're a responsible supplier. There's a couple of things that I've written down apart from that, because we've already discussed over that, is that I think it comes down to the values of your business, and that is to have the courage to create and achieve all of these things. Challenge the status quo, take on the challenge and be on the front foot. Don't be defensive, be offensive. Have the agility to seize opportunities as you see them. So if there's an opportunity that you can see as a result of COVID, I'm a firm believer out of every crisis comes an opportunity. Have the agility to seize those opportunities as they arise. And more importantly, achieve success through collaboration with other suppliers. Like, talk to other suppliers that you're working with on the day. Look, I'm going to be working with you on Saturday. Have a chat to them about their processes. Is there anything they require from you, particularly as a celebrant? Like, as a celebrant, I like to get all the information beforehand, and particularly at the ceremony. Then when I'm going and emceeing at night, I want to make sure that I'm fully compliant and fully over everything that the client expects. Most importantly, customers first in every single thing you do. Make sure that you put your clients first and their safety first before everything, and of course your employees or your contractors. And the last bit of advice that I have, as I've touched on before, be very careful about 2021. Make sure you're prepared, because it's going to be a massive year for weddings. We thought 2020 was going to be the star year, the twin year, but 2021 is phenomenal. Try and hold your prices, add some value, perceived value for the clients. But yeah, just hold your ground, be prepared, be ready, because what we're seeing in Adelaide, and we're a very conservative market in Adelaide, what we're seeing here is a great amount of confidence. Bookings are coming thick and fast, and the spend is a lot more. We're noticing a doubling in the average spend in South Australia. So have the courage, challenge the status quo, agility to seize opportunities, achieve success through collaborating with other suppliers and venues, and always put your customers first, their safety first.
Fantastic. Kathryn?
Here's the legal perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
You ready? I've got my coffee.
Here we go. Terms and conditions. Firstly, look at your booking fee and how it's described. Okay. Make sure that if you've set your percentage or you say it's non-refundable, make sure that the percentage that you've set in your booking fee is actually realistic to the work that you're going to perform. So if somebody says to you, you've asked me for a 40% booking fee and you're going to keep it, what did you work for? So that's addressed by saying, and when you're entering into your terms and conditions, doing a very, very good description of service. Okay, so here is what I'm going to be paid for. It's not just turn up at your wedding. It is, this date, I'm going to start drafting do your paperwork, celebrant. Here I'm going to just do the speech. Here, put your services in there so that when you say to them, I've actually worked for this, that they don't have to go, worked for what? Secondly, don't mistake a booking fee to a cancellation fee. So if you're going to have a booking fee that is a hybrid for work performed, but it's going to kind of be like almost like a liquidated damages loss I suffer if you cancel, I'm going to protect the date. I'm advising start moving to a hybrid booking fee for work performed, cancellation fee for loss of date. I'm seeing too much of this hybrid non-refundable booking fee to lock in the date. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and to me it did, but the more I think about it, it's actually one of the reasons why I have struggled in some court cases to really get over the line why a fee is non-refundable. And it's not so much that they're winning on the court, they're winning the court over that it wasn't worth the money, but just is a lot easier to explain if your contract explains it. Secondly, have postponement clauses in your terms and conditions, but have them very, very clearly saying what actually is going to be the trigger for a postponement. Become very, very clear about what is causing the termination or the postponement. COVID is stopping me from having my wedding. No, COVID is not stopping you. Is it going to drastically change your wedding, or are you effectively just changing your mind because it's not going to be the wedding that you think it is? So I want you to hammer, just really bed down why it is that they don't want to have their wedding. If there are legislation rules that say this cannot happen and it is materially and drastically changing the contract to the extent that it was beyond ever what you imagined, fine. But if it's because you don't like the fact that Nana can't come across from Victoria to be there, that's a change of mind.
Correct.
Okay? If you're a photographer and you have a contract that says that you have to take wedding photos, then that you can form that. You can actually turn up and do that. So if you don't want me to turn up, that's a change of mind. It's not a case of I can't have you turn up.
So what you're saying, Kathryn, difference between change of mind and impossibility.
Spot on, impossibility, and all this frustration, right? So everybody's like, oh, frustration, it's like, no, just relax. You can actually say, you know what, it is a frustrated event. Don't you decide, let me decide once you've gotten advice from me, but don't be afraid of this word frustration. Everybody's like, brides and grooms are loving it, like they're Googling like what frustration is, just everybody relax. Firstly, frustration, for a contract to be frustrated, which means it's void completely, the event has to be, or the provision of the services under contract have to be rendered completely impossible. Not, it's going to cause inconvenience or it's going to cause economic hardship. The case law is very, very clear. We don't care if it's going to cost you more money and you're going to have to go to extra effort because the circumstances have happened. Complete impossibility or such a material change to the contract that it is beyond your wildest dreams ever that you planned. Don't fiddle around with your force majeure clause if you have one. All right, so just don't fiddle around with your contract at all. You should be
fiddled around with mine,
avoiding. Sorry.
You fiddled around with mine.
It's called, I have the insurance to do it if I get it wrong, John. You know, I'm very
Correct.
my insurance. Correct. But you know, so everyone's doing a little bit of Google foo and going, oh, force majeure, act of God, I better put pandemic in. No, you don't actually want the contract to be obliterated. Sorry, I'm going on a big rant here. This is what I get paid for. You don't want to have pandemic as a force majeure event. You want it to just don't dive in there, okay? What other things? Health and safety of your staff. Have the ability to remove yourself out of the premises if there's stuff going on that you don't like from a COVID perspective, because the responsibility lies with you if your staff get hurt or sick. What else? I'm just like,
I'm sure there's more. You're on a roll. This is fantastic.
I'm
really,
doing
really
hours
great.
and hours of,
So helpful.
I'm doing hours and hours of seminars on basically what I've learned from COVID, but terms and conditions, they really are going to need to be up to scratch. And we have learned a massive lesson from COVID. And yeah, the industry is going to have to level up a little in its profession, but don't forget, it's not, terms and conditions are not a dirty word. Having terms and conditions in your business actually shows a level of sophistication. I know a lot of people are like, oh, but they're not going to like terms and conditions. You're a business, all right? You're not a charity. So I want terms and conditions when you're handing it over to your couples that you'd be proud of them and go, no, this is actually a sign that I'm actually very serious about the business that I run, and I'm organised, and I'm.
Yeah, and that's certainly how I feel, Kathryn, now, with your work that you've done with us. I feel really proud that I'm protected, I'm covered. My clients, not one client has questioned. It's more structured now. Like before, you mentioned about taking an extract here and something from there and something from here. And that's what my agreement was like. It was originally designed 25 years ago by a lawyer, but certainly wouldn't stand up today. So I think more than ever.
Sorry. Look, and I've been very, very careful again. I'm a huge fan of always recognising privilege. I understand that having a corporate lawyer, a commercial lawyer at your whim like this is a privilege. Okay, so when people go, oh, I'm going to go get some terms from Kathryn, and that's not everybody's going to be able to, just splash out on this, but I can tell you that your 500, 700, or depending on what level of supply you are and how in depth you want your terms, can save you thousands in the long run. And I sound like I'm hustling here, but also my terms won't read like the Bible or the language that you see Tolstoy or Shakespeare. I have been able to just slowly work them so that they're in plain legal language, so that brides and grooms just don't go, oh, I just want to have a wedding. So yeah. But thanks, John. I always appreciate the supportive words that you give publicly about the work that I've done.
No, I just think the industry is very fortunate to have you, Kathryn, someone that we can rely on that understands what we're doing, and that's probably for us as suppliers the most important thing. We've got you in our corner, helping and creating a path that we can walk down and comfortably knowing that we're protected. Because look, it is a different.
I also despise being in court. I mean, I don't like the concept of it. The time that you're going to spend dealing. Yeah, the time that you're dealing with, firstly, I don't actually want people to come to me with disputes at all. No. But secondly, go, okay, well, somebody wants their $500 back, and then Kathryn tells me that this could play out in court for the next 18 months. Spend your money wisely, guys. Like, just don't spend it on me, or spend it on me on your terms and conditions, but you don't. But that's to say, doesn't mean to say that you just back down and toss money at couples the minute they ask for it. But court is not fun. It's fun for me. I enjoy it, but I've never had clients that walked out on the day after a court going, oh, that was fun. Oh, can't wait for the next piece of litigation coming my way. So no, I want to actually avoid people getting to court, and often not even just through sheer hard legal battling it out. It's about making smart decisions with legal, solid terms behind you.
Yep.
Absolutely. On that note, I'm going to have to wrap things up for today. Thank you both so much for coming. John, again, just a wealth of knowledge, and Kathryn, there is so many people asking for your details in the chat box. So I think you might get
a need to clone herself.
Can I just say can I just say there is a little bit of a backlog, but my team and I, we're working as hard as we can to field inquiries. There's only so many of us at the moment, but once we get that event law platform on, we won't be doing the manual terms and conditions. I've got this fantastic program that takes you through that same interview that I do at the moment, and we're looking at that going live in its full form in the coming months. So everyone get over maybe their hurdles, the intensity of the wedding season now, and you're going to see a fantastic platform to work through. That said, contact me at any time. Like I'm on board and still working as usual. Just a bit of a backlog.
Absolutely, don't feel left out, John. There has also been several people asking for your contact details.
That's fine. Yeah.
Oh, he's on my payroll, so all the things that he said, John's saying he's busy, and it's not actually because of the number of weddings. It's because he's out there on roads flicking my business cards everywhere.
Commission based, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. I will 100% share all of Kathryn and John's details with everyone who attended and those who couldn't stay for the entire webinar as well. Along with a replay of today, we'll also be putting up some little snippets from today and some great quotes on Facebook over the next coming days. As I mentioned before, we've got a fantastic tracker for COVID restrictions for state by state and by specific supplier category as well. It's on easyweddings.com.au/COVID. Check it out. And of course, if you have any feedback, please shoot me an email and I will make sure that we're trying to get you the most up-to-date, in-depth information, which is particularly difficult in Victoria, but we are...
Or anywhere, really. Even New South Wales, things are a bit like haphazard at the moment, but...
yeah, good luck. Good luck to all of our Victorian colleagues.
Yeah.
Feeling very sorry for you. Yeah.
We're all pretty excited that we can go out for dinner this weekend.
I'm still, but can I just say, so I know it's going to wrap it up. I've been working with a lot of Victorian people, even though they're not actively out there doing weddings, they're chipping away at their back end. So I've actually seen some really good positive stuff coming from Victoria, but it's the back end stuff of, okay, well, let's redesign our website. Let's, re-jazz. So
best time.
Yeah. But I feel for you guys in Victoria. But it's showtime.
Hang in there. Next year is going to be a cracker.
Absolutely. I think we're all pretty excited to get out of the house this weekend. So on that note, it's almost lunchtime.
And drink vertically.
That's right.
Drink vertically.
Well, we're only allowed in 2-hour bookings at most. So luckily there's not a lot of damage you can do in that time.
Yeah.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Kathryn and John, have a wonderful weekend and I hope to talk to you both soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.